Good afternoon to all of you, and I'm Esther, your host for today, the president of Vishakhapatnam. And it's going to be a great show, especially with our speaker here. So, before we get on with the proceedings, let's briefly spend some time talking about the Venture Development Center. As some of you might be aware, VDC is a startup incubator program established by Geetham in partnership with the Northeastern University, Boston. VDC is set to build and foster a robust entrepreneurial ecosystem on all three campuses. It promotes and executes some of the tried and tested entrepreneurship programs like New Ideas, Ready, Set, Go. Of late, VDC also launched a foundational course named VDC 111 on entrepreneurship and innovation for all the freshman year students at Geetham Agnostic of the Institute. All of these programs are run with the support of highly qualified and seasoned startup coaches. Further complementing the VDC's actions, we have e-clubs on all three campuses that are entirely student-run. Our e-clubs drive various initiatives and events like speaker series, chai chats, workshops, My Soil, Fuel, boot camps, and many more. E-Club aims to enhance students' entrepreneur skills and help them gain organizational and management skills as well. Also, eClub brings the student community some great networking opportunities with fellow entrepreneurs, mentors, government officials, think tanks, and resource persons from various fields. And today, we come forward with another fantastic event to talk about the traits of a successful entrepreneur. We have with us a seasoned entrepreneur, one of the most learned business consultant, a startup mentor, and one of the pioneer independent angel investors in India, Mr. Ajit Khurana. Mr. Khurana wears many hats. He's an author, an angel investor, a mentor, a TEDx speaker, a steering committee member of the NASCOM Startup Warehouse, an ex-advisor to the Kalari Capital, and a former CEO of IIT Bombay's business incubator, Sign. Recently, he was also part of the team that created the TV show, The Vault. Before all this, he was an entrepreneur himself. As an instructor at the University of Texas at Austin, he taught subjects related to building e-commerce. Back in 1993, when the term e-commerce had been coined yet, an undergrad in computer engineering from the University of Mumbai and an MBA from the University of Texas at Austin. Ajit is presently a leading name in the Indian startup ecosystem. He has never shied away from getting his hands dirty, from the starting two ventures as a solopreneur to helping many startups achieve scale with the corner skills in building a digital strategy, planning, negotiation, and developing to a go-to market strategy. Simultaneously, he has helped dozens of startups raise investment. He truly believes that small business owners are driving change globally and need to be facilitated as much as possible. Innumerable small businesses have gained from his attitude vast professional networks, financial acumen, and digital mindset. Mr. Khurana, it's an honor to have you here today. Welcome to our event. Now we leave the platform for you to share our thoughts on the topic, the traits of a successful entrepreneur, post which we shall take a few questions from the audience. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Esther. Every time I hear such a generous and kind introduction of myself, I feel that, oh my God, I must have done something right. Thank you very much for that. And for all the people out there, I cannot see everybody's faces, but thank you very much for signing up. We have like about 55 minutes ahead of us. And I'll just set your expectations about what we are going to do in that. Esther said that later in the presentation, I'll be taking questions from you. But what she forgot to tell you is that before that, you will be taking questions from me. So I'll be beginning with some interaction. Subsequent to that, I will invite questions on any topic, which I hope Esther or somebody else will help me go through and prioritize, because hopefully you will have a lot of questions. But let's begin. Today's session is about traits of a successful entrepreneur. Now, you should know there are very many dangerous words in this sentence. The most dangerous one being successful. Because all of us know that that's really not a word that can be defined. And this word entrepreneur has been misused so much. And when we try to boil it down, to try to bring it down to like a chemical formula, like the recipe for pav bhaji and the traits for a successful entrepreneur, that is necessarily going to be an exercise of oversimplification. With that in mind, let us try to figure this out. I'm assuming that, Esther, give me a thumbs up if the answer is yes. I'm assuming that the participants are able to type in the chat box. Is that correct? Cool. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want people to throw in their responses. This a one-word response is good enough, or you can put whatever else you like, and I will, give you a little time to respond. But what are the traits of a successful entrepreneur? If I told you I have a friend who is a great entrepreneur and has achieved great success in a venture that he or she set up, in your head, without knowing that person, what traits do you think that person will have? What will that person be like? Throw some traits at me, please. So, for example, I already see Ashutosh Tiwari saying perseverance. Then I have got discipline. Please, more. So we have perseverance, discipline, dedicated, passionate. I think I missed some there, but please go ahead. Then there's hard work, adaptability, persistent, creative strategy. Oh, this is going really well. So there's a great idea. Somebody's creative, dynamic, confident, has experience, good at time management. The person is a PhD. Venkatesh, that is the first. The person is a PhD. Hardworking, visionary, having motivation, constantly looking for opportunities. By the way, for those of you who are wondering, why am I speaking like this? I'm actually reading the chat of this session itself. Time management, consistency, hope, grit, positive mindsets, risk tolerance, good at failing and learning, hopefully succeeding also because it's a successful entrepreneur. Empathetic, hard work, persistent. This is absolutely fantastic. Esther, you wasted my time and the time of all participants because you wanted to know the traits of successful entrepreneur. Here they are in your chat box. Risk taking, improvise, adapt, overcome, hungry, critical thinking, calculated, risk taker. Very nice. Now, thanks for this. Never be depending on single income. So I'm actually now moving beyond this question. Thank you very much, everybody, for being so participative. I think we easily picked up like 30 to 40 unique traits, and then some of them were repeated. I will have one more question for you. And this one, if you have access to emojis, you can use a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Or if not, you can say yes instead of a thumbs up or no instead of a thumbs down. So let's ask a much simpler question than the previous one. We saw a bunch of 20, 30, 40 traits, right? And they are still in the chat box. How many of you listening to this session possess all those traits? So let's see a thumbs up or a yes, or a thumbs down or a no. Yeah, so we're getting responses. And since all the responses are in the negative, Gurpreet Kaur says, not all, I have a bunch. Trying to adopt them, says Lalit, but basically everybody so far is saying no. Satish Reddy, I've got to meet you, take your autograph because you have all of those traits, as does HJ Jayatirtha. Very good. Very nice. Not all. Oh, I've got Venkata Naidu and Rajneesh Patel also giving me a thumbs up. I'm going to assume that's a thumbs up to my extremely eloquent speaking skills, as opposed to the fact that you have all those traits. Because the fact is, I have been interacting with entrepreneurs all my life. I have been part of institutes such as the Business Incubator at IIT Bombay. I have been an investor. I think that I have not come across anybody who has all of this. And we have somebody saying that we don't really need all of these traits, which is great. Here is something that you need to keep in mind. A lot of the traits that were listed and some that were not listed, such as communication skill, being extroverted, being a leader, etc., because sometimes those things also come up. A lot of those traits are very desirable in general. Like, for instance, the answer is always good, right? Should be an optimist or a pessimist. Unless you want to weasel out of that question by saying realist, but between optimist and pessimist, you tend to choose optimist, etc. So while all of those traits that we listed were good, positive traits to have, the fact is that nobody has all of them. In fact, if you wanted extreme performance, like how many of you are 10 out of 10 on creativity or 10 out of 10 on risk taking, 10 out of 10 on confidence, frankly, we may have none of those traits. At least I am not 10 out of 10 on any of those things. I have been a moderately successful entrepreneur in my own assessment. So if we are expecting a person to be all of those, we are really expecting to have Superman. Thank you. I can see that I'm still getting a lot of responses. Being authentic is also an interesting one. But what I'm saying is that what we are talking about is, can a Superman and a Superwoman only be a successful entrepreneur? The answer is no. I'll give you an example. Often entrepreneurs are extroverts, but I have dealt with many entrepreneurs who are introverts. Often entrepreneurs are risk takers, but I have been an entrepreneur and I must tell you that for my 2 stints at entrepreneurship, I think that the time I spent doing most was in reducing the risk of the venture. So the venture continues to survive, thrive, and has greater opportunities in the future. So this is very easy for us to take this Superman-like traits of a successful entrepreneur and say that is what is required. Because if indeed we needed all those traits, the fact is that most of us were not entrepreneur material. Experience shows that is not the right way to look at it. So for instance, is there absolutely any trait that an entrepreneur must have at all? Yeah, actually there is one. Of their entire list, there is one which is unavoidable and which is hard work. While entrepreneurs will try to do smart work, etc., but I have really not come across an entrepreneur who, unless he or she inherited a business as well as a good set of customers, you have to work really hard and you have to deal with uncertainty. I think that if you are hardworking and have the ability to stomach some uncertainty, I think that is enough. Beyond that, if you have many of the traits listed, great, icing on the cake. I think those traits are good. But hard work and dedication, which means ability to really sustain uncertainty, is the only thing that is required. Often you will hear, like, so for example, if one of you were to ask me, hey, I want to set up a business in blah, blah. I want to sell traditional Indian goods online and become a e-commerce destination for that. Suppose you came to me and said that, and then asked me, do you think that's a good business idea? Most people in my shoes would go ahead and tell you, please do what you are passionate about. Please do what you are interested in. How does passion relate to this? For example, if something is a good business, then why do you need to be passionate about it? Maybe you can be passionate about being in business. And if something is really not that great a business, just because you are passionate in it, how will that make it successful? Because the space of entrepreneurship, as many other spaces in human existence, tend to be driven by slogans. In fact, a session of the type I'm conducting right now also runs the risk that all I will come here is make slogans and say take risks, the future of the country depends on you, and blah blah. I may just make all these slogans, the session will sound very good, nothing will come out of it. Since the space of entrepreneurship is rife with slogans, I must tell you that a lot of what you hear might be partially untrue. And again, people are not trying to mislead you. It is that what they are saying is true or valid in that context, but not necessarily in all contexts. So here is my belief. I would also strongly recommend that whatever is the business area you have chosen, you better be very, very passionate about it. And do you know why? Because nothing works out absolutely positively. So there are days when you'll wake up and you'll wonder, what am I doing with my life? All my colleagues are doing that and they seem to be so much better off than I am. But what about me? Will this ever happen? Anyway, people have told me, maybe my parents have told me this is not the right thing to do. Am I wasting my time? Those sort of doubts and questions will keep coming in your mind. And only if you are genuinely interested in what you are doing, will you be able to survive those. Otherwise, 1 or 2 periods, bouts of uncertainty come your way and you are finished. Now, I have not interviewed or polled all the people who are listening, but I would assume that a lot of people listening to this are in their 20s. I'm in my 50s. I'm 51. But some of them could be in their 30s. So we could have a diverse age group, but a lot of you could be in your 20s. As a result, you have actually grown up in an era where words like startup and entrepreneurship were used maybe since the time you remember. But I have not grown up in that era. For example, this entire buzz and widespread interest in entrepreneurship is only about 10 to 11 years old. Sure, entrepreneurs existed even back way before then. I became an entrepreneur in 1994, but the buzz has been only recent. So If you could help me out with answers to one more question, and you will be tempted to give long sentences, don't do that. I will figure it out based on the keyword that you throw at me. What is it in today's world that is encouraging entrepreneurship or causing all of us to explore entrepreneurship as an option? What has caused entrepreneurship to become famous? What has caused entrepreneurship to become a valid career opportunity? Let's hear some. Let's hear some. I know this is not as easy a question as the first one, but what is the reason why entrepreneurship? So making money, having a vibrant lifestyle. Okay. Actually, I'm so sorry. Hold on. I have, based on the answers I'm getting, I have actually realized that I have not asked the right question. You are giving me reasons why people want to become entrepreneur. Now, that is true. Independent fame, sense of freedom, unemployment, etc. Yeah, these are the reasons why people want to become an entrepreneur. I'm not talking of that. My question was actually the other side. Why have so many people become an entrepreneur? What has changed in the world? Like, for example, all these things, you want a vibrant lifestyle, freedom, etc., existed in the 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 100 years ago, 500 years ago. People wanted this. But in the last 10, 11 years, something has happened. For example, like Venkat Ashish said, that there's the economic opportunity. Somebody is talking of market size, etc. Socialism has increased. There are success story of other ventures. Very good. That is one of my top three. There is something that has happened in the recent past. Globalization probably is one that has caused entrepreneurship to spread. There is certainly innovation, collaboration, financial intelligence. Mahesh V talks about more government support, social media, etc. Suppression of talents by superiors. Hey, you seem to be a little wounded there, but we see funds from the West. Very interesting. Very interesting. In fact, I have top three reasons, and two have already been covered, and the third has been covered like in a very indirect way. So I'll just give you my reasons. And by the way, my reasons are not better than your reasons. It is just that it so happens that my microphone is on, so I can talk better. So let me have some success cases. See, when I was also growing up, we had words like, Bill Gates has done this, Steve Jobs has done this, Dhirubhai Ambani has done this. And those were motivational, inspirational people. But when I look at Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and Dhirubhai Ambani, I don't identify with them. I don't think, Bill Gates and me are very similar. So if Bill Gates could succeed, so could I. Or Steve Jobs and me are very successful. If he could start Apple, I can start Pineapple. Right? So it's not as if I can identify with them. But what has happened in the last decade or so, a lot of people who are like me, which means like you, probably with similar backgrounds, socio-economic, academic, cultural, whatever, names that sound very similar to yours, they have become successful entrepreneurs. So it has set a good role model that, maybe it can be done. You don't have to be a Bill Gates. That is one. Second thing is, and some of you may wonder, some of you maybe have grown up in an era where everybody had mobile devices, right? So if you have a mobile phone, well, the mobile phone has allowed people to reach out to other people, right? And this was not always the case, as you probably know. It came in the mid to late 90s. The presence of the mobile phone, I think, also has done a lot. And then the third, which is very similar to the second, is that now internet access is available to everybody, right? So because of these three reasons, the last reason would be availability of money. Today, investors are willing to give you money. I have personally, so I invest in startups, but I invest in two ways. One is where I directly give money to a startup, and second is where me and a bunch of other investors form a syndicate, and that syndicate gives money to a startup. As direct investment, I have 36 investments that I have made. And as far as participating in a syndicate is concerned, which is how I like to invest abroad. So if I'm investing in an American company, because I'm sitting so far, I like to be part of a group so that somebody is overseeing them. But as part of a syndicate, the total number of companies that I have invested in is over 100. But here is the thing. Now, all those companies have some of my money and some of other people's money, which helps them go forward. Note, this is not charity. This is not philanthropy on my part. I am investing money so that I make lots of money in return. It usually does not happen. In some cases, you make a very good return. And in few cases, you make a very moderate return. And when you make a moderate return, you really wonder whether it was worth it. But for those few extraordinary successful cases, that is what makes it worth it. But availability of mobile internet, availability of role models that are like you, and the availability of capital has made it realistic and possible for you to use all those great traits of entrepreneurs that you have and today become a successful entrepreneur. Let's take this one step forward. We have discussed some traits. We have discussed the reasons people become an entrepreneur. Then let us look at what should you look at. Like for instance, if you were to go to a set of, like if I were to have right now a panel of investors with me and I ask them, what is the number one thing that you look for when you have to invest in a startup? Please note, I'm not suggesting that what investors say is the guiding principle, but I'm saying because I have several friends who are that, suppose I were to ask them that, the fact is that most of them would say the team. You have heard that. If you have seen any videos on entrepreneurship, they'll say team is very important. And I also agree that team is very important. Unlike most other investors, I don't regard team as the number one factor because I have seen teams which are not A plus. They might be A or B plus, and they still do well. For me, the number one criteria is the market opportunity, which by the way was one of the factors listed in the chat a moment ago. Because I feel that when the market is growing and large and allowing new entrants to come in, even a B plus or a B entrepreneur can do well. But if the market is a sunset opportunity, and for example, today, if you want to try to set up mobile towers and you want to, grow mobile telephony, though all of us are on mobile telephony, it's an extremely tough business to get into. Only people who are already there and have a good footprint can probably do something, and they also are not doing very well, right? So I think it's the market opportunity and the team. Now, when we say team, what does that mean? For instance, I was part of what at that point was the 6th largest venture capital firm in India called Kalari Capital, and one of their advisors was Ratan Tata. And I cannot claim to have spent more than just like a minute or two talking to him. But my question was around, that what is it that really causes businesses over generations to keep growing? Because as we know, the Tata house has grown over generations, and you can't meet, there aren't too many Ratan Tatas around, to be able to ask that question. So he turned around and said something which will sound obvious to all of you, but he basically told me it is all about the people, right? I did not have the opportunity to ask me, are these people the employees? Are these people the citizens of the nation? Are these people the customers? Because all of those are people. But he told me it is all about the people. And indeed, almost everybody, when assessing a startup, will say that either the team is the number one factor or the number two factor. But then the question comes up that we started with what is the trait of a successful entrepreneur. Now I'm broadening that to what is the trait of a successful entrepreneurial team, right? So this is something I could present again in the form of a question, but I want to retain at least half of today's session for question and answer. Esther is already looking at her mobile phone, and that gives me the feeling that I have stopped being very interesting in this session. So I think that I should, sorry for putting you on the spot, Esther, but when I'm addressing a class and I see students looking down and smiling, I'm hoping that they're smiling at their mobile phone. Otherwise, what is so funny? What are they looking at and smiling? But coming back to what I was saying, what are traits of a successful entrepreneurial team? Here is the question. For the purpose of so somebody is throwing some responses at me, trust and teamwork. See, you're right, Lokeshwara, that it is you have to have trust and you have to have teamwork, but I'm actually talking of a little more functionally. Like, do you need to have, as an entrepreneurship team, a finance person? Do you need to have an engineering person? Do you need to have a marketing person? Do you need to have an operations person? What are the various people that we need in the team? Here is the correct answer. What is it that the business cannot do without, as in cannot do without in being A plus? For all businesses, the answer is that you have to be A plus in marketing. Because as a startup, you have a lot of limitations. You have limited money, people don't know you, you are just getting started, things are not streamlined. So somebody's talking about how do you find a co-founder? Let me come to that in a second. But all of these can be overcome if you're very good at marketing. So I think that if I'm looking at a founding team which does not have somebody with a marketing background, I will not look further. I will not look about, oh, how great a thing they'll do. Or I'll not say, oh, tomorrow they'll hire a marketing manager. Because, tomorrow they will hire a marketing manager, but the marketing manager will go away, right? So Other than the marketing person, what do you need? Do you need a technical person? And by technical person, I'm not necessarily talking of an engineer. For example, setting up a startup related to counseling students, then the counselor will be the technical person. Home-based pickles, then the hi, my answer, and you need a technical person. Beyond this, you do not necessarily need anybody. Ashutosh is informing me that I'm breaking.
Yes.
Esther, am I still breaking? Because you know what I've done?
Now you're fine.
I've actually kept. Okay, so I've kept a second device which has the second connection. In case the break is sustained, just inform me. I will immediately move to my second device because we want the session to go well. I'm assuming right now it is okay. Correct?
Yes, it is. It is good.
Excellent. Excellent. So what I was saying is that in my opinion, assuming there are two founders, because there can be the question, what if there's only one founder? But assuming there are two founders, we need a technical person, technical in the area that the startup is working in, and we need a marketing person. As long as we have these two, we are fine. Somebody might say, hey, what about an operations person? What about a finance person? And so on. Hey, great. As in, we could have all of those, but I'm just saying, what is an absolute necessity? If I did not have a customer acquisition, sales, marketing person as a founder, I will not work on this. And if I did not have somebody who was an expert in the area in which the startup was operating, I would not work with that startup, because my experience, statistical experience, has shown it's very, very difficult to succeed if those two traits are not in the founders. Then you can have the founding team. So some of the responses that we got, that you can have good teamwork, you can have trust, you can have vision, and all of those things. Founding team means that one or two or three or four founders, along with the first set of people who join the team. The founding team is also very special because in most cases, the venture does not have enough money to spare for the founding team's salaries, or at least attractive salaries. In light of which, yes, somebody talking about crowd. So while I keep throwing the questions, I have a full half an hour to respond to those questions. So I will be picking it up. So don't hesitate. Even if I'm talking of something else and your question is about something else, please put it in there and I will take it up. But coming back to what I was saying, the founding team needs to be rewarded with the possibility of being co-owners of the business. For those of you who understand the concept of stock options or ESOPs or employee stock option program, that is what I am referring to. That when you take people on in your founding team who to some extent are based, they are making some sacrifice, they are buying into your story and your vision, and in return they are working probably day and night for you, maybe out of a garage from their home or what have you. In light of that, you can reward them and say, if you stay around in my company for a year, I will give you X percentage. This could be like, let's say 0.25 or 1% of the company for staying, and then in one more year I'll give you that, etc. So this is how you can reward the founding team members with stock options. There are startups in the US who give all employees, not just the founding team option, not just the founding team members stock option, but actually all employees. In India, that culture is relatively not as widespread, but it is getting increasingly widespread. There are pros, cons, as well as issues to think about. But what have we discussed so far? We talked about the person who is the entrepreneur. We then talked about some of the reasons that entrepreneurship has become famous. I then talked about what people look for. So for example, you notice I talked about team and I talked about market opportunity. Why not idea? Why not traction? That traction means how you've already achieved. Why not product? Why not partnerships? Of course, all those things are important. However, if a company is just getting started, that means a company that's seed level, close to zero, obviously the company will have no or very low sales. This does not mean that it cannot go up to become a Microsoft or an Apple or a Google or an Amazon or a Flipkart tomorrow, right? Because they all started from zero. So in light of that, some of those things, if they are missing, I can try to extrapolate and say, okay, they are missing today, but will they be present tomorrow, right? So this could be one of the ways of looking at it. Finally, I would like to round this up by saying, whether it was 10 years ago, 100 years ago, or I'm sure 1,000 years ago. I wasn't around 1,000 years ago. Yes, because I'm more than 100 years old. I was here 100 years ago. But the fact is that regardless of what period we are talking about, people wanted to do some form of commerce or business. Today we call it startup or small business or entrepreneurship. At some point of time, I don't know what they were calling it, but the fact is people were transacting for their benefit or their profit. The difference between then and now is that in this connected world where you have so much access, where you're sitting around the world, around the country, and I'm talking to you, you absolutely positively have to leverage on the ecosystem. So for example, there is this program called the Smart Ideathon, and then there are other such programs. They are actually on a platter bringing opportunities to you and say, participate in it, and this is what you will gain. There could be prizes, but more than just the prizes, because the prizes are always given to a few. You will meet people, you will probably be given some freebies, you'll be part of a program. So I have found that people who can derive all the joys and benefits that are available in their environment, this could be specific, tangible value that is provided to you. It could be a network, it could be advice, it could be relationships. All of these could soon lead to partnerships and probably customer acquisition, sales, investment, etc. These are the people who succeed. And while I did many sessions of the type that I'm just about to conclude and move to Q&A, in the period from 2010 to I would say around 2018, after that I stopped because I thought there were too many of these sessions happening and I didn't want to be one more. But I came back here today and did such a session because I have moved to other areas of interest in decentralized finance, in digital assets, etc. But the reason I decided to come back and do this session is because I think that the way this session has been organized and this Smart Ideathon, I'm very impressed by it. I think something good could come out of it. I think that by participating in programs such as this, we could actually launch ventures. So I strongly recommend that you go ahead and explore that opportunity. For now, I will thank you all for your patience. And we have like, my Zoom is saying that I have 226 participants. Assuming that 5-10 of them must be from the organizer side, that still makes it more than 200 people. So if you have any questions for me, just throw them in the chat box. I do not know, Esther, if you are fine with it. You can let people come on the screen and ask the question. I don't know how you want to organize it, but whichever way you want to do it, I am fine. You could read out questions to me and I could answer them. How do you want to do the Q&A, Esther?
So thank you so much. So we have Srinija, who is the Vice President of Bangalore, who would help us with the question and answer session. So Srinija, over to you.
Thank you, Esther. So as Esther mentioned, I'm Srinija, the Vice President of eClub Bangalore. I'll be taking over the Q&A part of this webinar. So before we begin answering your questions, let me inform you that there will be a feedback form posted in the chat by my colleague Vishal. So your feedback is valuable and is highly appreciated, and it will help us improve our services from next time. So please fill it whenever you can. And let's get started now. So Mr. Khurana will now be answering our questions. We collated these questions from a form we rolled out during the registration. So yeah, let's begin. So the first question is
one second. So I will take those questions that you have prepared, because see, what I'm able to tell is that since you have slides prepared on those, these are questions that existed beforehand. But even in the chat box, some really good questions are coming up. So I will take your questions, Srinija, but I would request you that if you could also pull up some questions from the chat box, which are coming spontaneously, because I just saw some good questions there. So let's take a mix of both, if you don't mind.
Sure, sir.
Okay, so begin with your first question, please. You said bootstrapping or what was the question? Bootstrapping or external funding? Okay, very good. So here is the thing. This is really a little like saying, you know, our love marriage is better or our arranged marriage is better. While every one of us may have an opinion on those, it is not as if both of those choices are available, right? It is not as if I have a love marriage option here and I have an arranged marriage option here and I'm saying, oh, this one or this one, right? Life is usually not that way. A lot of this actually is that you really have only one choice. So for example, if external funding is not available, is this question valid? Right? And if external funding is available, are you going to go and tell the investor, you know what, I see that you want to give me 1 crore rupees and get 5-10% of my business, but guess what? I don't want to take it. What I'm trying to point out is that life is not so simple. However, still in the spirit of being a little more helpful with the answer, I like businesses that can be bootstrapped, which means if external funding is not available or it dries up, the business will still exist. I hate businesses which can exist only if external funding is available, or they die if external funding stops coming in. This would be my best answer. I think that all businesses should have the ability to bootstrap, but yes, if external funding is available in suitable terms and we can then rocket ship ahead to a much higher level, then you should be open to external funding. Next question. How do you choose the right mentors or investors? First of all, I'm loving this pink and blue animation that you're showing me. And unfortunately, or I should rather say coincidentally, the previous question is bootstrapping or external funding. And I said, this is like love marriage and arranged marriage. Unfortunately, you've given me another question where I have to use marriage or relationship-based analogy. How do you choose the right husband or wife? Oh, sorry, right mentor or investor? Basically, it gets down to the same thing. Of course, at a functional level, the mentor, investor, advisor, board member, there are various words, should be able to help you. Which means if it's an investor, they should not just give you some money. They should be able to help you get some customers. They should help you make partnerships and connections. If it is a mentor, the person should not just be helping you with strategy. They should help you become a better entrepreneur, better leader, etc. But in addition to these functional traits, one of the things that a lot of people miss, which leads to a lot of pain eventually, is the absence of chemistry. For instance, I could potentially be very valuable to one of your business plans. And you'll say, hey, Ajit, become my mentor, investor, advisor, what have you. But the fact is that it is possible at the same time that, we don't have the perfect chemistry. So we would have coordination hassles, we would have communication hassles or miscommunication. So I would say, technically, you should have confidence that they can help you. In addition, the chemistry should be made in heaven. That would be the way. Let's move to the next question.
So should I read out the question?
Yeah, no, actually, I'm actually reading Raghu Datta's question where he says why teachers don't teach entrepreneur from school time. So I'm going to answer that also. But how do I know how long should I stay in the adventure of starting up before burning my hands? Any early indications? Oh my God, I'm going to just stop giving love, marriage, and relationship-based analogies because this one is also promoting me to do that. How do I know how long I should stay in the adventure of, I guess you get the idea. But what I'm trying to tell you is, see, a lot of questions, in all three questions that have come up so far, are very logical questions. I must tell you that if I am not an entrepreneur, like let's say none of us are entrepreneurs, and we are looking at an entrepreneur, we treat them very logically. We say, oh, they are risk-taking. Oh, they are coming up with this business idea, model, etc. The fact is that entrepreneurship is a very emotional experience. Every single day you wake up and you're like, am I doing the right thing? And even, by the way, when other people believe you have succeeded, you don't necessarily believe so. In the year 2000, when I sold my first business, and at one point of time, I thought I had made enough money to never have to earn again. I was wrong, but at that point, I thought so. I was at the age of 30. The fact is that a lot of people who tell me, oh, Ajit, you're so wildly successful. I swear, I'm being very honest. I thought there was no bigger failure than me in the rest of the world. Okay. So entrepreneurship is a very emotional journey. Anybody who is only an investor or a banker will never understand the emotional roller coaster that an entrepreneur goes through. So how long should I stay in the adventure of starting up before burning my hands? If you don't mind, Agam, this is not an attack on the question, but the fact is that how long should I stay? My answer is 0 days. You might wonder, what the hell am I talking about? See, the fact is that where I have seen entrepreneurs who think of entrepreneurship as a punt, which means they say, let's try it out and see. These people always fail. Because for them, it was like going to a restaurant and trying out a new dish. And maybe it worked out, maybe it didn't. Basically, what you have to do is that when you are getting in, you don't think about this at all. You think about only how I'm going to make it succeed. And to look for early indications that the relationship with your startup is coming to an end and stuff. I think that frankly, just like in the relationship between two people, when one is looking for early indications that I can no longer be compatible with the other person, pretty much like that, this relationship is bound to fail. So I would recommend that if you are worried about burning your hands and adventure turning to misadventure, just don't do it. Just don't do it. Everybody shouldn't be an entrepreneur. How has the entrepreneurial mindset changed in India in recent time, given startups were heavily influenced by the West? Two parts to this question. Entrepreneurship is through the roof. However, suppose somebody is a carpenter, suppose somebody has a pawn shop, suppose somebody is a plumber, electrician. Are they entrepreneurs? So entrepreneurship in the Western model, the startup, the Silicon Valley, the venture capital has recently been heavily influenced and shot up. But the traditional entrepreneurship in India, the shopkeeper, the trader, entrepreneur was there even 100 years ago and 50 years ago. In the sense, think about the restaurant business where you go and you order idli and you order sandwich, and then think of the format restaurants like a McDonald's or a Burger King or a Subway or Pizza Hut or any of those. Just like those Western models, which are in franchise model, have come and affected the traditional restaurants, no doubt. Likewise, the new entrepreneurs have definitely come and affected the old entrepreneurs. So, for example, the Amazons, Flipkarts, etc. of the world definitely have put a lot of strain on the traditional traders as well as retailers. On the whole, entrepreneurship is through the roof, and today it is far easier. I can't say it's far easier to succeed as an entrepreneur, but it's far easier that if you succeed, you can have spectacular success, right? In your lifetime, you know, the traditional houses like the Tatas and Birlas, then came the Ambanis, and then came newer guys. In your lifetime, you can beat them. This was not possible when I was your age. Next question. Srinija, I hope I'm not saying your name wrong, but what I would like you to do is, we are at approximately 3:45, yeah, 3:43.
Yes.
So in another 5-7 minutes, I'm going to move out of these animated, colorful questions. And in that much time, Srinija, if you could just read up some of the questions in the chat, because they are more spontaneous.
Yes,
I will request you to please read out some questions of your choosing, and I'll respond to those. But when I'm coming here, when you are in a job with liabilities, entrepreneurship can be a dice. Okay. Question. Basically, if entrepreneurship, Vipin Johnson was an entrepreneur, and I wonder if you're the same, Vipin. Hey, if you are, then you can probably say hi to me in the chat. But Vipin, see, the fact is that entrepreneurship anyway causes a lot of mental strain, even if you did not have a lot of liabilities or inability to sustain business. I completely agree. So while on the one hand, I do believe that my role here today is not to make sure that all of you become entrepreneurs. No, entrepreneurship has to be in your character. It has to be in your sentiment. It has to be an emotion that you have. You can develop it, by the way. Here's the thing. You know, this smart ideathon, etc. that I was talking about. If you have some of the basic ingredients of entrepreneurship, then the ecosystem has a lot of opportunities which help you develop as an entrepreneur. No doubt about it. But that still doesn't mean that everybody should be an entrepreneur, just like not everybody should be a doctor or an engineer or a journalist or a lawyer. Having said that, let us assume you have decided that you're going to be an entrepreneur. The next part is, what if this is not the right time in your life? Like you have liabilities, like this question said. Yes, I would recommend that you time it right. You have to have some luxury. I would say about 2 years of luxury to not make any money and to not do very well and still persevere. If you don't have that time, quite likely you are not giving yourself the opportunity to win. So maybe you can time it a little better. Maybe you can do it a little later when these liabilities, these EMIs or whatever other liabilities you were referring to are not draining you. Let's look at the next question. How do you analyze the market size in the respective local market as data is not available? So this works in 2 ways. I must tell you this, Rukma. Indeed, market size and market opportunity is very important. However, and you know, if you will go to any startup guru and tell them what I'm about to tell you, tell them that Ajit Khurana said this, they will like, Ajit Khurana has lost his mind. But I must tell you this, that one of the biggest advantages of being in India, as you know, there are several disadvantages of being in India, right? But one of the biggest advantages of being in India is that the domestic market is a huge market. Like I have been a resident of Singapore in the past. I came back in March of 2020. And I must tell you that the market size there is like a tiny dot. The population of Singapore is, and that includes all foreigners and everybody, is less than the population of Mumbai, right? So there, if you come up with an offering, market sizing is a very, very critical factor. In India, there are moderately big market sizes available for all products and services. That is one very good thing. Having said that, of course, this is still important because it is not just about market size, but how much will you be able to capture. So I would say focus on addressable market. Cryptocurrencies are booming, valuations are notching new highs, a wild theory saying it's a bubble. What is your take on this? Is India going to see more acceptance of cryptocurrency? So here's the thing, since September of 2016, which now makes it like 4.5 years, 4.5 years, I have actually moved to digital assets and cryptocurrencies as my choice of career. And I have indeed been focusing on developing projects there, working with people's exchanges, etc. As far as being a bubble is concerned, I think that every new industry, which means, for example, once upon a time it was the internet industry, creates many bubbles within it. For example, when e-commerce started, so many e-commerce businesses started, all of which burst out. They don't exist. Even in your own memory, today we have Flipkart, some do Snapdeal, Amazon, etc. Go back just a few years, there used to be Traders, Yepme, Yebi, and I don't know, so many names. I don't know if you remember, but that was just a few years ago. They've all gone. They don't exist. I don't know if ShopClues exists, but that used to be big. That used to be number 3 after Flipkart and Snapdeal, etc. But what I'm saying is there'll always be bubbles within an industry. But if your question, so even in cryptocurrency, I'm 100% sure that a lot of people are just riding the wave and just taking gullible investors' money or gullible customers' money and adding no value. Having said that, the question of whether the cryptocurrency and digital asset space, I just got a message that my battery is running low. If it gets critical, I'll just rush and get a charger, which is across the room. But if we are talking about is cryptocurrency and digital assets and things like that actually a bubble in their entirety, the fact is that absolutely not. Not any more than internet is a bubble. Yeah, so I have such remain questions from about 10 years ago also which remain unanswered. But please, yeah, throw in your questions. So Srinija, let's take some questions.
Yeah, sure, sir. The first question is, should a successful entrepreneur require an MBA degree?
Actually, this is a question that comes up a lot. If you really are talking about requirement, the answer is obviously no. But if you were to ask this, I must tell you, if you were to ask this question to almost all entrepreneurs or investors, they will say, no, what a joke. MBA is absolutely not required. And they're probably right in their own way. Now, look at my case. I have an MBA degree. I did an MBA between the year 1991 and 1993, when the Britishers were still ruling India, for those of you who know your history and dates right. Yeah, don't nod your head. That was not the case, Srinija. Britishers were not ruling India in 1991. All the same, so I did my MBA back then. And I must tell you from personal experience, please not my experience, not yours, is that I would not have been able to be an entrepreneur, leave alone a successful entrepreneur, had I not done an MBA. Because my level of awareness of various aspects of business was fairly low. I gained that awareness, knowledge, learning, enthusiasm, motivation, and mindset and perspective during my MBA. And while I was probably entrepreneurially minded, but I would not have been able to do what I did without my MBA. There are many people who disagree with this. They may be right, because in their case, maybe they are able to do it without an MBA. So really, you have to decide it at your end. Let's move to the next question. And by the way, Srinija, I'm not keeping track of time. So because we should start and end a program at time. So maybe when we are at around 3:55, 3:56, you can alert me to that.
Sure, sir. So next question is, it's asked by Raghu Datla. How can an entrepreneur be a monopoly in their sector?
Okay, so this is a very interesting question. You probably have asked a question which is more valuable than even you understand, because we use the word like competition, which is the opposite of monopoly, right? For all practical purposes, as if it's a good thing. It's a great thing for the country. It's a great thing for the customer. But if it is a very competitive space, startups find it very difficult to actually grow and capture market share. So if I am selling a cola and there's always already a Coca-Cola and a Thumbs Up and a Pepsi Cola, you can bet your life that it's going to be close to impossible. Even companies like Schweppes, when they had come up with cola and stuff, Sport Cola was the name of a brand which came in India about 15 years ago. It was by Cadbury Schweppes, even they failed. The fact is that if you are in a competitive space, you have to differentiate yourself or create something special about what you do, such that people don't see you as directly competitive with others, which means you create a unique proposition which leads the customers to come to you. So I'll give you a simple example. Suppose you are running a tuition class. And the reason I give that example is that everybody understands that business. There are like hundreds and thousands of tuition classes, and now you want to set up one more tuition class, but you want to be a monopolist. What do? Well, you have to come up with one more idea. I'll give you the example of India's largest tuition class called Mahesh Tutorials, which is listed on the stock exchanges with under the name MT Educare. You know what they did? They adopted technology before anybody did. They adopted technology before anybody did. And that was their differentiator. Some other people could use something else. Some other people could introduce analytics on tests and give people better advice based on the mock test that they do. Some people could do more number of mock tests. Some people could do a mock test every day. That if you're appearing for a board exam, we will make you do 300 mock tests. I don't know. You will come up with your differentiator, which if the customer accepts as a valuable differentiator, makes you a monopolist in that little differentiated area you have created. Let's move to the next question.
Okay, sir. The next question is by Maruti Akela. He asks, what crisis would one face during profit building, and how should we sense our threshold and make decision to expand or quit?
So we need to study Zen, Buddhism, and other fields of philosophy to answer such philosophical questions. So I'm going to just make a brief attempt because it's a very deep question. I'm not about to be able to answer it in depth in a minute. But having said that, there is a trade-off between speed of growth and safety of growth. So for example, if I go all out and say I'm going to get into a do or die mode, I will either do or die. Namely, either I'll grow very fast and then be seen as a visionary entrepreneur, or I'll burn out and become a flash in the pan and be seen as a, why was he or she so stupid? So my idea is, what I like to do is that unless you have emotionally accepted that in a day, week, year, month, whatever, you may shut down your business if it doesn't do well, your first idea should be survival. No, I'm not saying you should always, survival is the only point. I'm saying that if you are not ready to die as your business, then please make sure you survive it. If you're saying that I don't care about whether I survive or not, either I want to have glory or death, then that is another way to look at it. I would just say that with a stable mind, decide what your objectives are. And that is like for example, somebody who starts a business and fails in 2 months and goes back. Did the person fail? Or somebody who set up the business and is 10 years into it, making very small profits and not achieving the reason they got into entrepreneurship, did that person fail? It's not clear to me. You set your objectives and stay the course. That is the way to de-risk it.
So this could be the last question. So what do you think about money?
So money, for me, I think that entrepreneurship cannot work without money. I think I have some money now. And when I was growing up, our family did not have too much money. So my father, he's still alive. He's in his late 80s. But he remembers the time when he had to run from what eventually got called Pakistan because India went through partition. So his stories of the fact that how they had nothing and they were living in refugee camps and food was being given by the government of India at that point of time. And that is the only reason they survived. So I have heard those stories. Then in my childhood, I have seen situations where we were able to not do so many things because we didn't have money. Like for example, today my children order from clothes from, like online stores. And I told them that, at my time, we would only buy clothes on 2 days in the year. One was on my birthday. My mom would get me a shirt. And then we would buy it on Diwali. For whatever reason, that was how my household went. And I said, it wasn't as if we would be. So I have seen lack of money. And when I had that lack of money and I would see people who were so rich that they had a car. You understand? So that was like the height of richness for me, that somebody can actually own a car. I decided that I'm never going to be poor in my life, and all career decisions, academic decisions that I will take will only be driven by how I can earn more money. Where as a child in my teens, that is a decision I had made because we had no money. I would see my family members suffer as a result, and I dedicated my life to that. Now, when I have some money and my children are born to a father who has some money, I see that their attitude is completely different. For example, when they finish their 10th standard, they actually have the audacity to say, or 12th standard rather, they have the guts to say that they will make a career decision based on their preference. Really? Preference? We made all of our decisions based on where the money was. Yeah, but the world changes. What I'm trying to point out is that your relationship with money is not going to be what it is. I have not seen richer people being happier people. Very simply. Okay, because I have been on all sides of the spectrum. I know people dramatically richer than me. So what I would say is that make sure you have enough. Make sure you have enough to even waste some, splurge some, but don't make money the only objective of your life, because you know what will happen. In the best case, you will get it, and when you get it, you will realize it was not worth it, and at that point you'll be too old, and all you'll do is address students in a seminar. Anyway, so thank you very much for
Thank you, sir.
inviting me to this session. Whoever's going to wind this session up, please take over.
Vanilla, over to you.
Thank you. And good evening, everyone. I consider this an honor and privilege to offer this word of thanks on behalf of eClub and BDC. As a team, we are indebted to Mr. Ajit Khurana for this thought-provoking presentation. In the last hour, we were able to see how a venture unfolds, and also what goes in. As a student, it erases our fears around what it takes to build a venture, and also what it demands from us. And also in your speech all through, you have also mentioned about that at this stage, like in this present generation, we can even beat Tatas and Ambanis. And that potential or that technology or assistance was not there at your time, probably. And reassuring that you give us a lot of boost and confidence that we can really achieve greater things. And also, you have emphasized about this doubt that whether we have to go for bootstrapping or it is external funding that is important. And you have really cleared this doubt. And you said that all businesses need that capacity to have bootstrapping. And really thank you for that information. And you have really cleared a lot of queries that we had in our minds. And thank you, sir, for your time and impeccable articulation, for having made things simple for us. And I'm sure with this, more students will sign up for Smart Ideathon. That is a national level business idea pitching competition from Geetam, and with great prize money and also personalized coaching. I would also like to thank my peers in eClub from all the three campuses who have worked so diligently to make sure everything goes smooth. My thanks are also due to our coaches who have guided us and Geetam marketing team who have helped us to promote the event. Special thanks to Northeastern University Center for Entrepreneurship Education and TIE Andhra Pradesh for their support and being our key sponsor of Smart Ideathon. I would like to close it by saying this was an eventful curtain raiser for the big Smart Ideathon to follow. Just let your ideas flow. And thank you, sir, once again.
Thanks a lot, sir. It was we still have a lot of questions coming and coming, and we are saying that please put down your questions. We'll collect all the questions and we'll somehow find Ajit sir's time to answer it. So we will get back to you with a list of questions.
So there is that one student who is like that SP Dheeraj chap. Why is
Yes.
my question not answered?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Shruti, you are going to answer all those questions. I have full faith in you. Okay, so I
Thank
will
you,
accept
sir.
your answer. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As I'm telling it to everybody, I will kind of collect all the questions and we will try to reach out to you for the difficult ones where we are unable to do. Okay. And thanks a lot, sir. Very, very interactive and very, very inspiring, sir.
Okay.
As always.
Thank you, Mr.
As
Ajit.
always,
I think
I
you
should
added
add
a lot of
this.
value. You added a
Yeah,
lot
thank
of
you. Thank you.
value to our students. So really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Khurana, and a great weekend ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.